Welcome everybody to this review of the Range Rover. You know, these days so many people are talking about the Range Rover Sport, but there's of course the very original one. And we are dealing today with the Range Rover in its 2015 version, and, which will be very important, this one is a new 3-liter diesel TDV6 with 258 horsepower. Well, formerly would have probably said that is too small engine for the Range Rover. But we're going to find out today if driving this huge car can be combined with an acceptable consumption. So starting with the design, you see what has been never changed for the Range Rover is this huge front grille. It always says, "I am the boss." And Range Rover customers especially appreciate that one. What has radically changed here now in the new Range Rover is of course the headlights, and we have this very special daytime running lights. I have not turned them on right now because the frame rate of the camera is higher than the frame rate of the lights, so it would be flickering and looks very weird on video. So, but basically you already see the lights. This is one eye here, and then it's carried over here until the side, and it looks pretty unique, I must say. And this is kind of then the new signature of the whole Range Rover model family, which is also very interesting in that case. Then we characteristically have this very strong hood. We just have a slight power dome, and also the lights are stressed by this design line here. And what is very especially important, when you're sitting inside the car, then you always see this massive hood, and it stresses this feeling that you sit very high and have also a massive car in front of you. The side profile is also classically Range Rover with a slightly falling rear end, and this is also so typical for this car, because all the other SUVs, full-size compact SUVs nowadays, they tend to have very round structures, round design lines, and the Range Rover is a contrast to this. And finally, the rear is also pretty massive and also kind of old school, but in my opinion this is good, because it's also differentiation to the other modern SUVs. And you also got this very British elegant style. So you have a very huge car which is still elegant, and that is a very hard thing to do actually. So the only thing which is modern here at the rear are also the rear lights, which are also carried here to this round design line, so they look a little bit more modern. And so we also find that very soon in the interior, the Range Rover concept is basically nowadays we keep the classic structure and add some modern elements to it. And so in this superior interior we also find the same. For example, we got leather here on the outside and modern knobs here on the inside, aluminum look also here, but then we got a wooden inlet which is very elegant in my opinion, and this is again this combination. The same we find here in the center console. We also got this dark wood here. I wouldn't maybe go for the shiny one because you always see fingerprints on it. I would rather go for a matte wood style, but still it looks very elegant. And also again the combination to the aluminum here, and also for example the climate control. I can turn it on that you can see how it really works. For example, here now you see the temperature is displayed behind a small glass. This is also a very nice feature. We also know that from the new Jaguars now, for example. And then we got another aluminum logo here. This all adds to this very emotional atmosphere in the cockpit. And I think Well, it's very rarely that the combination of old and new works, but in this case it really does. In general, in my opinion, this is one of the most beautiful interiors in all the automotive industry, although this is just the basic interior. For example, here in Germany, the Range Rover starts with this kind of interior, lowest trim level, and also with the smallest diesel at about 91,000 euros. And then there's also the Vogue version and the top version Autobiography. Then you also get the changed interior, for example with contrast stitches, and you can also pick bright leather. So this one is kinda, well, the easiest interior. We've just got everything in black leather and then the wood and the aluminum. So you can really spice it up even if you want to have it. As for my opinion, for example, I like it when the interior is all bright, because it really brightens up the whole interior and you have an even better feeling when driving. But in general, it's kind of hard to top the feeling in this interior, because the seating position here, you got this so-called command driving position, Land Rover calls it that way, and that means that you sit really above all things, and you also don't care what's happening outside. Actually, you don't hear any noises, the sound isolation is superb, and you don't really care if you're going 10 kilometers, 100 or 1000 or even more. I think it's one of the most comfortable cars altogether, and you never get any back pain no matter how tall you actually are, and I couldn't imagine any comfortable car. Actually, also the air suspension is playing a big role in that case, because you know, you got of course long suspension weight in that high car, but also the air suspension lets the car really fly on the road. So there's also no problem, no matter what bumps you actually face. So I want to hear also your opinion about this interior here in the front. And now we're just taking a small look at the rear compartment. So as we step out here, I want to show you another detail. This is actually something you can store little stuff in. See here. It's a nice idea, but I'm not, you know, quite convinced of the quality. Just listen to this. It sounds really weird. The same accounts here for the belt holder. Just showing you now. When you actually got everything attached, you know, it isn't covered by any fabric here, which would be very easy, but then it's all the time scratching here and making weird noises during driving. And actually it's quite annoying when driving, and there's such an easy solution. Just put a little bit piece of fabric around there and then it's gone. So actually Range Rover customers obviously have to do that on their own at the moment. And the last floor here in the front, if I open that one, which is actually quite beautiful because it's so long, cup holders here, or for example to open the basement garage. And then when you want to flip it back, there's actually a very beautiful mechanism, and you will see it looks just amazing, but then just watch out. Wow, sliding back, nice. But what's that? I mean, come on, this is a car that cost 100,000 euros or even more. Actually, I think it wouldn't happen in German premium cars, but on the other hand, you got such a nice interior, so emotional, and that's something very different from the German manufacturers. So it's still kind of the case that was earlier with the British cars. You always have this little bit of extra, but then you also have very small details that are maybe not that perfect. The Range Rover is one of the very few cars where you sit as comfortable in the rear compartment as in the front cabin. And so because you have just a lot of space for your knees, you even got the driver's seat quite in the back right now. I mean, we don't have to talk about headroom because you can maybe put some other people above your head here. And then it's also so comfortable just to sit here. You know, there's also in the Autobiography version, there's also the long wheelbase possible meanwhile, and you can also pick single seats here in the rear compartment, so to make it a real chauffeur car. And I think it perfectly makes sense because it's definitely more comfortable than, for example, a very big sedan, for example Jaguar XJ or a Mercedes S-Class. So if I would have the money to be chauffeured all the time, I would maybe go for the Range Rover here with the single seats, because you also got that upright seating position here in the rear. Talking about luxury in the rear compartment, we also have a separate climate function here, where I can control the temperature, for example, and also where the temperature is actually coming from. And well, I could also get some energy, or if I want to smoke a cigarette, but I think you shouldn't do that in Range Rover because it would ruin the car totally. There are also rear seat heating optionally available, but we don't have it here now in this kind of basic version. I mean, how can you say it's a basic version with such luxury, but at least a basic version of the Range Rover. Then again, we also have this, wow, I mean, it's so massive here to fold the middle part. Then we also have some cup holders here and some hidden space where it looks like it would be fitting for a cigar box, I think. Or if you don't like cigars, you can also maybe put chocolate in there or something like that, it would also fit. Coming to the trunk now, this is here the basic trim level. So if you do not have the electric opening, of course, for example in the Range Rover Vogue version, you also have the electric. Then again, it is split. This is also very typical for Range Rover. So you open that one, and also when you just let it go, you know, it doesn't fall down, so that's very premium like. Then you have a very strong element here just to sit on, for example. There are also these very famous pictures where the royal family sits here or stands here when they did their hunting or something like that. So it's also a very famous piece of the Range Rover in general. And I think it's also again something very special that this car has some of these unique features. However, there are also disadvantages to this, because if you're standing in front of it, you know, you have a hard time to put things very in the back of the car. So that can be actually a problem. Then again, this cover here is also kind of weird in my opinion, because you know, I have to fold it in a certain way, and you see just, you know, here and also on the other side, it gets a little bit black because just from the cover here, and you know, it's also not that kind of premium. But you see, you have a lot of space in here. And then if you even fold the seats, there's a 1/3, 2/3 split here, and there you see, I mean, you can actually buy anything. You can also just get your surfboard in here, even if you're sitting in the front, I suppose, or maybe also your bicycle. So actually, this car is not only for premium use, but also for your hobby. And this is also an advantage, that you can really carry everything with you and still, for example, travel with a lot of people. Formerly you would have put a replacement wheel in here, below that cover. Nowadays you don't really need it. You have a compressor here that you can actually repair the tire. But then, I mean, look at that. I think it's unused space. And you know, by seeing these things, also the battery here, well, of course it has to stay open, that you can put out or change the battery, do something on it. But maybe on the sides you could have put some nets, for example, that show the customers, okay, you can actually put some stuff in there as well. I'll be back in a second, just after a small picnic, right? So I'm strong again now to continue with this review. This car has so much space in the front, rear and in the trunk, but it has to come from somewhere. It's almost 5 meters long, to be exact 4.99 meters. Well, and that can also be a disadvantage, of course, especially on European roads. I mean, our friends in the US, they maybe do not care at all because they have so great parking spaces. But here it's all sometimes, well, not that easy to get along with such a long car. But we'll tell you more about that when driving it now. And therefore, we first take a look at the engine. So let's open the hood. It's always a bit tricky here to find the right spot, and well, I'm not sure what this is. A little bit dusty around there. Well, then let's take a look at the big diesel. It is a big diesel in general, but for this car it's rather small. 3 liter capacity, 258 horsepower. This one is the smallest engine available for the Range Rover, and I can already tell you I'm very satisfied with it. It's also available for the Range Rover Sport, and I mean the weight of the car with this engine is just 2,100 kilograms, so just above 2 tons still. But if you remember maybe how much weight the old Range Rover had, it was sometimes 2,600 or with the supercharged engines even around 2,800. So it has really lost a lot of weight. First of all because of the engine, this one was very important. And the chassis is from all aluminum now, and that also saves a lot of weight. So the whole car has become so light in comparison to the old one, but of course it's still a heavy one compared to other smaller cars. So before we start the car, I already put down my personal armrest, so I can be very relaxed also for my arms while driving. And then the first thing you notice here is just the smell from the leather. Actually, well, you maybe remember it if you also had a Jaguar XK, because it's the same leather. You feel the structure, and also it's the same leather as in the Jaguar XK, and this is the basic leather from the basic, for example in the XK it was also the Bond grain interior. There are also other leathers available here, for example in the Vogue or Autobiography version. They are softer then, but they are also a disadvantage because you sweat on them then more in summer times. Then again you maybe need the seat cooling. In this basic version here you maybe do not need the seat cooling, because this doesn't get so hot when it's rather rough leather in comparison to the other one. So let's start the engine right here. You see that the instruments are all digital. Years before Audi and Volkswagen have introduced, they have been digital also in the latest facelift of the old Range Rover. So it's not new here with the all-new Range Rover. Still, it has been a little bit more refined with a higher resolution, and that you also got faster reaction times for all the instruments here, for example. So it's almost like in real time. And I think I like it because you have you know, more flexibility. It's not that old school style, it gives a little bit modern touch, and then you also have the possibilities to receive information from the GPS there, for example. Multimedia system, it is basically still the very old one. They have refined it a little bit, so the reaction times are faster now. But still, with the all-new Range Rover, everyone would have expected that they go for something else, because the resolution is not that good here. However, you don't have knobs here, it's by touch. You just see the names of the touch pads here each. And you also have, for example, a special camera here where you can see in the front. It's right and left in the front. It's maybe good for off-road riding especially. Then to connect the phone is quite easily actually. For example, I've tested it with the iPhone. You just need maybe 30 seconds and then everything is connected, and you also got Bluetooth streaming. As for the GPS, I'm basically satisfied with it because it's also got a nice reaction time here now. But you see, it's not the most modern view for this one. But you get along with it, and it's also quite intuitional. You find everything even if you do not really know the car. But you have not a central knob to control it, you really have to do it by the touchscreen. That is also, you know, what do you think? Do you more like touchscreen, or do you more like the system Audi and Mercedes offers with the knobs here? However, we also do have a big knob down here. And that one is for the shifting process. We can put it in reverse gear. And then we also have the rear view camera. You see, for example, the Mercedes rear view camera has a better resolution, but you know, the basic perspective is quite good in my opinion, even if the resolution could be better now already. You see these yellow lines at the outside, they change and they actually show me where we are going to. And then if I just keep them in line, it's pretty easy also to go backwards, especially with such a long car. So you always need that one, definitely. If you, for example, have to turn on very narrow streets, or maybe in the basement garage or something like that, it's actually not that hard as you think, okay, 5-meter long car. But it's easier than with a very long sedan or maybe a sports car. We have also tested it at the airport, for example, going into very narrow parking boxes and also on some very narrow ramps. It is still okay. I think because the car is that high and also got this SUV style, and you got a very good visibility to the front, side and the rear. You know where the car ends, and that really helps you also in these tricky situations. The steering wheel, well, it's not that direct, I must say, and you sometimes always need long ways that something happens with the steering. It could be a little bit more progressive for my taste, but again, the steering wheel has such a good handle here, such a nice soft structure, and also with the wooden inlet. It's just a change when you sometimes grab on the wood here, and this just adds to this very pleasing riding feeling. We also got a heated steering wheel here. I love it, especially in winter times. Maybe you're not that cold at all when you're sitting in the car, but then your fingers get very cold. So you got the heated steering wheel. That's such a great luxury component here as well. And we already feel it again now, the air suspension, and we sit very high. I think there can't be any better comfort in a car, in my opinion. It's such this superior riding here, together with a 3-liter diesel. I think it has enough torque always, and when you're riding this car, you don't feel like I have to race someone else. For example, yesterday evening there was like a BMW 5 Series with black alloys next to me, and he wanted to provoke me, and I just thought, you know, whatever, I'm sitting here in the Range Rover, why should I even race you? I got such a comfortable car, and I don't care what anyone else thinks, you know. And this feeling is really supported while driving here. We're just shaking a little bit by the great suspension, so relaxing. By the way, as proof for the sound floor, here, you hear it, you know, when I shake a little bit, it just sounds weird. Just use some piece of fabric to kill this flaw. The official consumption figure for this diesel is 7.5 liters, and usually, according to the real figures and to the official figures, there's a difference of 2 liters. In this case here, we don't have that, because 7.5 liters is the official figure, and the real figure here now is 8.8 liters. And in my opinion, this is perfectly okay for such a heavy car, even if it has lost weight. And I think by this consumption you can really combine driving such a big car with a acceptable consumption. For example, the latest compact SUV we tested also had consumptions about 7.5 liters. That's not such a big difference anymore. What also helps you to keep the consumption down is using the automatic cruise control. Just click here, and then the digital instruments always show me how fast I'm going, and I think it's working very well, this automatic cruise control, especially because formerly and still in some Jaguar models it doesn't stop and go until the standstill, but now that works here actually. So you can really trust the system. It firstly keeps distance to the car in front of you. You have 4 different distance types. And then, if there's a real traffic jam in front of you and you have to stop completely, it also stops until 0 kilometers an hour. I think this is really necessary. I've talked about it a couple of times now in some reviews. Either an automatic cruise control has to be just, you know, 1 speed, and then you have to brake on your own, or it has to brake until standstill, but nothing in between. So this one is fixed now, and I think you can very well use it. So when you're going off-road, it's also a lot of fun with the Range Rover, because you can theoretically go everywhere, even if you're going through water. The maximum wading depth is 90 centimeters, so you could actually go through a swimming pool with that car. What is more important for everyday driving, although, is not the wading depth, but the driving modes. And well, you maybe know from Land Rover the terrain response system. This one here got the terrain response 2 system. That means here in the middle, I do not only have the choice between normal driving for snow, deep ruts, desert, or like deep sand, and for rocks. I can just also put the auto mode. Then he automatically switches the mode. You know, he sometimes sees how the terrain is kind of surfaced from the feedback the car gets through the tires, and then the modes are picked on separately. We do not have hard off-road conditions here now, so we cannot really test it. Just a little bit, and I think still already this soft off-road driving is a lot of fun, and I also used some test tracks in the past, and they were also very exciting, because you can even go upstairs with this car. And another great feature for this is, of course, that you can put the car even higher. For example, if you really see there's, you know, a lot of rocks, then the car moves up with this air suspension. It doesn't get more comfortable with it, because you have less space then that the suspension can work. Now we even sit higher. It's pretty funny feeling, but you know, you only need it for off-road. But it's still always good to have this one as soon as you got the air suspension, which is serial here with the Range Rover. So let me sum up the new Range Rover for you. On the one hand, you got this very emotional appeal, this combination of tradition and modern elements on the exterior and on the interior. Besides sports cars and open convertibles, maybe one of the most emotional cars here, because you got so many great luxury features and you got this superior driving style, maybe like in no other car at all. Then you also got the great consumption here now. Below 9 liters is really okay for such a big car. And the car also got lighter. Still, I must say, you could also go for an old used Range Rover, because well, the changes, there aren't really so much in my opinion. You got the aluminum chassis now, that is very great of course, but still also the old Range Rover offers a lot of things. And then you have to think, okay, maybe you got a new infotainment system in here. No, you don't actually. So this one is one of the biggest flaws, I think, in my opinion. It's really old school, the multimedia unit, and also some other flaws you have to live with some strange noises, or maybe some strange behavior of the rear wing when flipping down the hatch. So you have to live with its British flaws, and on the other hand you have again more emotional features which make this car that special. So let me sum up this car in one sentence for you. I would say, my car is my castle.